These are the 5 levels of wetsuit warmth, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why most surfers hand over an extra $200 at level 2 for warmth they were never going to feel. This is the breakdown of how neoprene actually keeps you alive in cold water, what the thickness numbers really mean, and where the price tag stops buying you heat and starts buying you marketing. Let's start with the one almost everyone gets wrong, which is how a wetsuit warms you in the first place. Most people repeat the old line that a wetsuit traps a thin layer of water against your skin. Your body heats that water, and the warm water keeps you toasty. That story is only half right, but the half that's wrong is important. The real insulator is the neoprene itself, a closed cell foam packed with tiny nitrogen gas bubbles. Those bubbles are what slow your body heat from bleeding out into the ocean. A bone-dry suit is actually warmer than a wet one, which tells you that the trapped water was never the hero of the story. Water pulls heat off your body roughly 20 to 25 times faster than still air does. And that single brutal fact is the entire reason this multi-billion-dollar industry exists. Let's talk about the numbers on the label. When you see something like a 3.2 or a 5.43, you're reading millimeters of foam. On a 3.2, the first number is the thicker neoprene wrapped around your core, and the second is the thinner, stretchier stuff on your arms and legs, so that you can actually paddle. Thicker core equals more warmth, thinner limbs equal more movement, and every wetsuit ever made is a negotiation between those two enemies. Now, this is the detail that quietly costs people money though, because while most brands measure that foam before the lining is added, some measure it with the linings included, which means the suit you think is 3 millimeters thick might have less actual foam than the label promises. Level 1 is warm water territory, 65 degrees Fahrenheit and up. This is where you live in a rash guard, a 2 millimeter top, or a spring suit that leaves your arms and legs bare. Nobody overpays badly at level 1 because there's barely anything to overpay for, so we move quickly. Level 2 is where the money starts vanishing. The 3.2 full suit, the single best-selling wetsuit category on Earth. Rip Curl's own guide builds the 3.2 for water around 58 to 68 degrees, which covers the conditions most surfers actually paddle out in. And this is exactly where the overpaying begins. You can buy a perfectly warm 3.2, and you can also buy one that costs almost twice as much. And the gap between them is far smaller than the price gap suggests. A budget tier 3.2 like the O'Neill Reactor runs around $145 to $160. Step into the mid-range and a Rip Curl Dawn Patrol sits around $250. Reach for the premium shelf and a Rip Curl Flash Bomb chest. Zip hits $450. Same category, same water temperature, but the price has tripled. So what does that extra money actually buy? The warmth in a modern suit comes from 3 things: the thickness of the foam, the fuzzy thermal lining glued to the inside, and the seams that stop cold water from flushing through. On the lining, Cleanline Surf, a major surf retailer, admits something the marketing departments would rather you skip, which is that a lot of the warmth you feel from a plush lining is really just the suit being dry and cozy when you first pull it on. Lomo, a UK wetsuit maker, went further and tested those shiny titanium reflective linings that brands love to advertise, and their verdict was blunt, that the heat reflection claims are massively overhyped, and they found no meaningful thermal benefit at all. The seams tell a similar story, and honestly, the seams matter more than most buyers realize. A flat lock seam stitches straight through the neoprene and leaks, so it belongs in warm water only. A glued and blind stitch seam, the cold water standard, glues the panels and only stitches partway through so water can't pour in. Premium taped and liquid sealed seams are the most watertight and the most durable, and that durability is genuinely worth something. Wetsuit Warehouse in Australia puts the whole thing plainly. That neoprene is just an insulator, and to insulate well, you need a sealed environment, which means you don't necessarily need to go thicker to get warmer. You need to stop the leaks. but the fact that should change how you shop comes straight from Rip Curl's official guide. A modern 3-2 with good neoprene, a proper lining, and sealed seams can run as warm as a 4-3 from a decade ago. This means that the technology has trickled so far down that a well-built, cheaper suit today outperforms the flagship of 10 years back. Cleanline confirmed the same pattern in a different way, pointing out that the mid-priced O'Neill Heat uses the very same internal liner found in some of O'Neill's most expensive suits, like the Psychotech. You are paying for the same warmth technology at half the price. Then there's the twist nobody expects, courtesy of Hansen's Surfboards, and it flips the whole logic of buying up. Their roughly $200 suits can actually run warmer than their $300 suits, because those pricier performance suits deliberately strip out warmth materials to gain stretch and shed weight. The expensive suit isn't always the warm suit. Sometimes you pay more to be colder and more flexible, which is fantastic for a competitive surfer and a terrible deal for a weekend warrior who just wants to stop shivering. Level 3 drops us into serious cold, approximately 52 to 58 degrees, where the 3-2 taps out, and you move up to a 4-3, widely called the year-round all-rounder for temperate coastlines. Booties start going on your feet here, and this is the level where thickness genuinely earns its keep, because no lining trick replaces an extra millimeter of foam once the water turns hostile. Level 4 is the deep cold, 48 to 55 degrees and dropping, and now you're in a 5-4 or a 5-4-3 with boots and gloves as non-negotiable gear. A useful rule from the dive world says a 5mm suit paired with a hooded vest can match the warmth of a 7mm suit, and a 2mm hood can add roughly the same warmth as adding a full millimeter across the entire suit. Your head bleeds heat fast, so covering it is one of the highest value moves in cold water. Level 5 is the brutal end, below 43 degrees, and here you are, sealed into a 6'5" hooded suit with thick boots and gloves, the kind of setup that lets people surf through actual winter. Premium pricing at this level can genuinely make sense, because sealed seams and full linings keep you in the water longer when the ocean is trying to end your session early. Even so, the durability trade stays real. The inertia noted that the plush comfort of a suit like the Hyperfreak costs you some longevity, while avid surfers burn through their suits in 9 to 12 months, regardless of what they paid. Here's a slice of history to put the price in perspective. UC Berkeley physicist Hugh Bradner dreamed up the neoprene wetsuit back in 1951 and built it around 1952, then never managed to patent or cash in on it because his application got rejected for looking too much like a flight suit. Jack O'Neill turned it into an empire with the slogan, "It's always summer on the inside," and the Meistrel twins built Body Glove and coined the phrase, "fits like a glove." Bob Meistrel once told Forbes that the famous neoprene wetsuit, now a $100 to $1,200 industry standard, originally sold for just $29.95. That whole industry is now worth about $1.5 billion as of 2024, according to Polaris Market Research. So let's tie it back to where we started. The 5 levels are real, and the warmth science is real. But the overpaying at level 2 is the most expensive habit in surfing, because the 3-2 is where the technology gap between cheap and premium has almost completely closed. Buy warmth where it actually comes from, which is correct thickness for your water, sealed seams, and a decent lining, and stop buying it from a logo. A modern budget suit keeps you as warm as last decade's flagship. Sometimes the pricier suit is deliberately colder, and the neoprene doesn't care what you paid for it. Match your thickness to your water, seal your seams, cover your head, and keep the $200 you were about to hand over for warmth you would never have felt. If this spoke to you, then hit like and subscribe.